The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We are coming at you on August 3rd, 2022, and it seems like every day under the Biden administration is just another little bit farther into the abyss. But before we get into any of the show, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California, and my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So jumping right into it, this show is a little bit focused on the high-tech shepherds keeping the sheep in line, and that's sort of this crazy misinformation war that we're having, where it seems like those accusing of misinformation are often the ones generating the misinformation. And case in point, we talked about it last time on Knuckleheads of Liberty, on our Knucklehead Noise Patrol last time, and it had to do with Biden and his trying to redefine on the fly what a recession is. 2 quarters of negative growth has always been the accepted definition, and it's even been used by Biden himself in pointing at Trump when Trump was president. So, I mean, this is nothing new, and suddenly, because this it's an inconvenient truth for the Biden administration that he's in a recession, when so many people thought that things would be in a bit of a boom for him coming out of COVID. Now he is literally just trying to, kind of say the dog ate his homework or something. He's trying to say that, well, it depends upon what you call a recession. So maybe we could get the visual up there. So the White House spokesperson, literally, just as she won't define what a woman is, she won't define what a recession is now either. She just says, I know we're not in one. So, but she, when pressed, she literally refuses to define what a recession is, and then cites other sources to go ask them. Mostly this National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBER, is what she's referring to, which is a government entity. So anyways, we're going to jump into a few more issues on that, but let me kick it over to you guys right away. What do you guys think about this? I mean, this is just absolute lunacy. You don't like the argument, you just change the words on the fly so that you don't have to confront the argument.
Well, yeah, let's listen to what the NBER says in their Q&A section, when the question is, what indicators does the committee use, talking about NBER, the committee, she says, they go by, to determine peak and trough dates. Okay, so these are the dates that when a recession occurs, if you're going to have one, or a trough in the economic activity. So they talk about the determination of them is based on a range of monthly measures of aggregate real economic activity published by federal statistical agencies. Then they go through a list of a few of them, things like payroll, non-farm payroll employment, personal consumption, so on and so forth. The last sentence says it all. And I read to you, quote, there is no fixed rule about what measures contribute information to the process or how they are weighed in our decisions. So essentially, they just make it up as they go along. So the NBER, this agency, I guess a federal government agency, probably paid for by taxpayer money, I'm assuming, is just totally winging it. They have no basic. I mean, if you can't come up with a date of the trough, then how do you know when the recession began or ended? Correct? Right? Exactly. If you have no rule, and they admit they have no rules about how to determine that.
Well, and Tim, it sounds very much like this is saying, look, we're the shepherds. We're not going to give you sheep any objective measures to think for
Right.
yourself. Just have faith in what we're telling
Trust
you.
us.
That's
Trust us.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is religion. Trust us. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, but
Right.
Tim, that information that you just read is that recent wordage, or was that there previously? Previous to this whole controversy
This
about
was
defining a
this
recession.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember the month, but it was in 2021 because they were given examples of 2020, and basically examples of how they basically had nothing to say. So then, if you read the whole thing, every word, all they're saying is that they have nothing to say. Basically, because they have
But
no criteria
yeah,
whatsoever.
but you see
But
the
it was in
country here,
2021. It was not recent. It was not like, oh, they came up with this because of Biden. They've
Biden.
always, I think Biden just wanted to use them because they had no standards. And they admit they have no standards. They have no rules by which they
Yeah.
determine dates of a trough or a peak in economic activity. No, none. Nothing. So basically, they're free to call whatever they want a trough or call it a peak. Maybe the peak is a trough and the trough is a
There's a
peak. They
peak.
don't
Who the hell
care.
knows? Who the hell knows?
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
which really raises the question, the very interesting question: if the NERB, I think is what
No, NBER.
NBER,
Yeah.
if they don't know whether we have in a recession or not, and the administration is saying that we are not in a recession, how the hell do they know that?
Yeah. Well,
If the people that they are sending us to, they're telling us to go talk to these people, they don't have anything to tell us, well, we are in a recession or we're not in a recession. But the Biden administration, who are using these people as their source, is telling us we are not in a recession. How the hell do they know?
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't think of a better agency to send people to for a definition when the agency itself has no definition. I mean, wouldn't you send them to that agency if you didn't want a definition for a recession because you don't want to be pinned down as having been presiding as president over a recession? Well, of
Yeah,
course, you want to
exactly.
send them to some place that has zero rules by which to establish when a recession occurs.
well,
But
it sounds. Well, I was just going to say, it sounds very much like post hoc storytelling. They see what comes in, and then they'll tell you whatever whatever fits the narrative
Yeah,
afterwards that best comes out for
based
them.
based on what party is occupying the White House.
Exactly, exactly, and it's quite interesting to see the media, okay, and big tech and left wing economists doing everything they can to protect the Biden administration. Paul Krugman saying no, it doesn't matter. We are not in a recession.
Well, that's an excellent segue, real quick, Leon. I wanted to bring up the next article real quick because Wikipedia actually did something very strange, and this has to do with the snow job that Leon was just starting to segue into. But
Yeah,
Wikipedia had just changed the definition. It had included two negative growth quarters, two negative quarters of GDP, and that was part of the standard definition. And then suddenly it got removed, and then they locked editing. So they are saying that that's what we're going with. And this really disturbs me. I've heard, I think it's Sanger was one of the
co-founders. He was one of the co-founders
co-founders.
of Wikipedia. Yes.
Yes, and he's talked about this before too. I've seen an interview with him where he talked about how he thought this was going in a disturbing trend with Wikipedia, where they tended to be taking kind of left-wing narratives in some of their articles, and I really think that what Wikipedia does is just an awesome thing that they put together this free encyclopedia, and I've been a donor to it before in the past. And, I tell you, I really question doing that in the future if I know that this is just going to be some kind of propaganda mill now for, the Democrat Party. Anyways, and not just this, and Leon mentioned too, some of the other hacks in the media like Paul Krugman, and we'll talk about him in a second. But what do you guys think about this? I mean, essentially the social media and some of these other information websites coming out and just going along with whatever benefits the Democrat Party, that suddenly the language just changes. And we've seen the same thing happen too with, I believe, the definition of a woman has been changing on the fly too on a lot of these websites as well, and even dictionary type websites. Just absolutely disturbing. What do you guys think? It looks like we lost Tim. Hopefully we'll get him back soon.
But you see, this is the problem, Jason. This is the big problem, is that we have the media and government getting together to provide the very disinformation they're trying to complain about. Okay, because since God knows how long, we have always accepted the definition of what a recession is, but that's not good enough now because Biden is in the White House. Oh, we know what a woman is all along. That's not good enough because Biden is the White House. We got to make sure that we have the right, quote unquote, the right definition to be so inclusive. But everything now is just left-wing politics infecting all of our lives. Whether we are talking about the schools, whether we're talking about biology, science, economics, left-wing politics is now infecting it and infecting it in a very bad way. And this is not good for our society in general, because if science, which is really supposed to be the seeker of truth, okay.
Wait, Leon, when you talk about science in the sea, you're not talking about Tony Fauci, are you? Oh, not the science. You're just talking about science.
Yes. Because look at all the things that's going on that went on with COVID, okay? And Fauci and them gave us all this damn nonsense, most of which now have turned out to be false, okay? How many people died? I wonder how many people died because of the misinformation that came out because of COVID. Look at the use of hydroxychloroquine, which Trump endorsed. Well, Trump endorsed it, so everybody have to be against it. And they were. Doctors were disqualified. They were trying to take away people's license and all kind of stuff. But this is what's going on. The media and government is getting together to provide this information to the citizens of the United States. This is a bad trend. This is not good for our republic. And we better be very, very careful of where we go with this.
Well, and quite frankly, I don't know whether or not something like hydroxychloroquine or anything else would have been a positive or negative. But the big issue is that should be open for discussion, especially among doctors. And they were literally suppressing anyone who did not go along with the WHO's narrative or whatever narrative that the Biden administration was given later on with the COVID issues.
Well, just to round this up, Jason, it is now known that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin are very effective treatment. When given early, a very effective treatment is a therapeutic, very effective for treating COVID. The research is there for this. Some of it came up when we were in Las Vegas, in that presentation. I think you saw the presentation too, that those things are effective treatments. But Fauci and company were suppressing it because Trump endorsed, he endorsed he didn't endorse ivermectin, but he certainly endorsed hydroxychloroquine. But these people under this information thought that was a bad thing because they wanted to push the vaccines.
Well,
so,
as far as that goes, Leon, I don't think I saw that particular one, but I certainly understand what you're talking about. But I don't want to digress too far though into COVID at this point. But I get your point is that this is infecting everything. This redefining of the language and shutting down debate and just saying that you are the science and nobody else can talk, which is the most unscientific thing you can say. But speaking of unscientific scientists, let's talk about.
I just want to say one thing about Wikipedia, if I could.
Okay.
Yeah, just it's right there next to GoFundMe. At the end of every year around December, Wikipedia puts it out to help contribute because they just depend on contributions, blah blah blah. And I've typically given them money at the end of the year. That ends as of now. Okay, Wikipedia, and it wasn't much. I'm sorry, but I hope you go under again. I hope all these so-called free information sites that are only free by maybe direct cost, but they're not free to speak as it's not a free platform, in other words,
Yes.
anymore. It's gone. Yes. No longer does it serve a purpose for me. So therefore, they can go pound sand.
One thing I would say, though, is that when they say, you talk about these free services that sort of stab you in the back, like McAfee would talk about. I don't think, though, that Wikipedia is not that type of thing. They're not selling your information, as far as I know, or anything like that. It's just an issue that they've got a bunch of lefties that have sort of infected their structure. Their organization. Exactly. And they're steering the content, I guess. And that's one of the issues. Hopefully they can weed that out, because I think, from a libertarian perspective, I mean, Wikipedia has offered an amazing service in the past. It's just really sad to see it go in this direction. Hopefully it can be fixed and not thrown out.
Well, I hope they're sad to see me go in the other direction, because I'm not giving them another dime.
Yeah.
And, sorry, it's just how it is. Go ahead. There's probably plenty of ultra wealthy liberals out there that just love suppression of information. There are probably plenty of people that will give them the money I don't give them anymore. So they're not going to get it from me. That's all I have to say. That's all I can do. The only way I can control, I can't control what they do. I can just control whether or not I give them money.
Exactly. And hopefully that signal gets through to them loud and clear.
And right, exactly. I hope and pray there's a market solution to this problem, because too much of our high tech is ended up in left wing hands, and it's causing some real problems in our society. But I hope there's a market solution to this problem. I really do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I was talking about unscientific scientists, we have surprisingly economically educated economists, I guess, as well. And that brings us to sort of Krugman and his, I guess I want to call it Krugmanomics, because it doesn't really feel like economics. It just feels like whatever the shepherd says, that's what his followers are supposed to take. But Krugman has come out recently and says, well, it doesn't really matter whether or not you call it a recession or not. Well, that's kind of funny, because he wasn't really voicing that opinion earlier. He just seems to be voicing that now that his team seems to need an assist. So, and it's kind of a cowardly way to come out to say, well, it doesn't really matter, instead of just, clearly backing his side, right? He wants to give himself a little bit of a fig leaf, I guess, if it ever blows back on him. But, it's just ridiculous. And he's calling this negativity bias is what this is all, well, the bottom line is, if the definition was 2 quarters of negative growth, if that was the standard definition before, then it is or it isn't. We can either measure that. And it's one thing, it's an honest thing to say, hey, look, it's true that this says it's a recession, but maybe there's some positive indicators we can feel good about. Okay, you can make that argument. But to sit there and act like, that, well, the numbers don't matter, that don't help me, so we're just not going to talk about that right now. And let me just give you a little bit of Krugman's background for those who may not be well versed in Krugmanomics. So Krugmanomics, Krugman, before Biden came into office, he was talking about the coming Biden boom. And that seems to be yet one of the many predictions that he's made that seem to be rah-rah for the left. It never seemed to quite come true. And I also wanted to bring back to his famous quote, and he tries to say, well, this was just sort of a joke. But, just given the fact that he's so one-sided, I think we can be a little one-sided and not giving him any charity on this one either. But he said the growth of the internet will, so this is before, the internet was a big thing, right? He said the growth of the internet will slow drastically as the flaw in Metcalfe's law, which states that the number of potential connections in a network is proportional to the square of the number of participants, becomes apparent. Most people have nothing to say to each other. Oh my God, has he not seen social media? He says by 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machine. So that was Paul Krugman, post 2005, I guess, maybe that was back in the 90s. I'm not sure the exact date of that, but it's just, one thing after another. And yet this guy is celebrated in the New York Times as the guru for economics. Anyways, you guys want to take a swing at Krugman?
I mean, how this guy won a Nobel Prize in economics is beyond me. But I guess that says something about the politics of the committee who make the selection. I mean, Paul Krugman have been wrong on almost everything that he have ever predicted. Almost everything. Go back and look at his record. It is horrible. Okay, I'm sure he have had a few cases where he was right about something or the other. But you go back and look at most of the things that he have ever predicted in big public pronouncements, he been wrong. The man is a jack. Oh God, I can't say that. I'm sorry. Okay, the man is a JA. Let's put it that way, and could never get anything right. And he keeps coming at us with these nonsensical things. Now, just to save Biden from the political damage of having presided over a recession, now he's trying to tell us, we're not in a recession and it really does not matter. The economy is what it is. Yeah, we know that. We know the economy is what it is. But we are in a recession by the definition we all knew. The gross domestic product is the largest measure, is the broadest measure of economic activity. And if we see in it shrinking, something is wrong. We know something is going wrong in the economy. It does not mean that everything is wrong, but something in general is wrong and something needs to be fixed and corrected. But Krugman have to defend his political friends. So he have to come up with this nonsense, this so-called esteemed economist. He have to come up with this nonsense. This man should retire and just shut his mouth and go retire to some quiet island somewhere and never speak again. And he will help the world, the United States and the world greatly by doing that.
Well, I'll say it. Paul Krugman is an economic donkey. There, I said it. So, yeah, and apparently, although people don't have anything to say to each other, well, he's got way too much to say. That's all.
Yes, definitely.
He's got way too much to say, and he ought to stop saying it. But he'll never stop saying it. He's just, people just hold him up as he's just a Keynesian. That's all. And that's why he never predicts anything right, because to Keynesians, they're always doing the right thing. If they're printing more money and making more credit and currency in the monetary system, then everything should be hunky dory according to them. They see nothing beyond. What's the consumer spending doing? That's it. That's all they see. Anyway. I trust Bob Murphy, the Austrian economist, when he was giving. They no longer do it, but he was doing a podcast called Contra Krugman, and every episode was just him totally blowing Krugman's nonsense apart. And I had plenty of that, and I don't need to even hear from Krugman at all. I don't care what he says, because it's wrong. It's always wrong. Enough wrong. Not always. Yeah, occasionally he gets one right, but he just blunders into righthood.
Yeah. Well, it is funny that interview that he gave where he said it really doesn't matter whether this is a recession or not. That was with CNN. And, speaking of another institution that seldom recently gets things right as well. In fact, they're about to just about wrong themselves right out the door. But I guess I wanted to lead into our last topic in our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. These two are sort of related. So recently, there was a defendant that was on trial for January 6th. Riot. Let's see, his name was Guy Reffitt, and apparently he was being charged because he actually, I guess he had a gun on the premises too. He didn't actually use it or wield it, but I guess he was armed, and so they sentenced him to a stiffer sentence. But it wound up being I think gosh, it was 7 years. I think he got
7 years. Yes.
Yes.
7 years.
Exactly. But the key issue, though, was that this label of terrorism, when we talk about misinformation, and these were all trying to, the DOJ and the Biden administration was trying to label them terrorists. And the judge rejected that. The judge said in court, look, this definition does not fit what these people were doing. This was a riot. And so I just thought that was kind of worthy of mention here in all of this. But getting just as a segue to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, because we're almost out of time. Larry Summers is actually trying to tie our economic performance to those January 6th rioters, and he's saying that Republicans dismissing attack as is not much of a just a small riot or something is actually worsening inflation. He's saying so. His exact quote, he said. I think the banana Republicans who are saying that that what happened on January 6th was nothing or okay are undermining the basic credibility of our country's institutions, and that in turn feeds through for inflation. So I mean, it's just one thing after another. They're just trying to blame everything but Biden and Democrat policy for inflation, recession, and everything else. And by the way, in the same article, he was talking about the upcoming recession as well. And this was from June. Well, what do you guys think about that?
Well, go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Yeah, these economic imbeciles like Larry Summers and Krugman both dyed in the wool. Keynesians will always try to point the blame for inflation that they create on other people, and in which, in this case, there's no holds barred. Apparently, there's no limit to the nonsense they'll go to, including that moniker of calling these people terrorists. Just absolutely no limit that these people will do in their monikers and their blame throwing around that they'll do. Go ahead, Leon.
When history is written about this January 6th riot, of course, the rioters were wrong in what they did. But the prosecution of these people will go down in the history of one of the greatest miscarriages of justice we have seen in the United States. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're trying to do to these people because of they did wrong. I am not going to defend it. They did wrong. But this madness. Now comes Larry Summers trying to say even inflation. They are even infecting inflation. And listen to what they're saying. They're undermining the credibility of the government. Really and truly, the government causing our problems, and we're not supposed to say anything about it. We're supposed to just be quiet and looking at all the money, printing of money, government, and all the government spending that is ongoing, that is cheapening our dollar. We're not supposed to say anything about that. We're supposed to just be quiet.
I think what has undermined our faith in the government is $30 trillion in debt. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for. We've reached the end of our show. But before we, I guess we'll see you next time. But until next time, stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.